And second talk is on using Haskell as a DSL for immersive media. It's going to be given by Michael from Chinese.
Right, so actually originally planned to give this in Boston a year ago, but it turned out nobody involved in the project actually were able to make it there. So a year late, here it is. I was involved in 2012, 2013 in the Monitor Celestra, also Nordic style live action role playing game that took place on a boat here in Gothenburg. We transformed the inside of the boat into a Battlestar Galactica style spaceship, and players fly around in space and fight these islands and meeting colonies on the space. And as a part of making this thing happen, it ended up with Haskell playing in protocol, and I'm planning to tell you a little bit about that. So I'll first tell you a little bit about what LARP in general is all about. I expect there to possibly be one or two people in this room who, if they've heard about LARPing, might not be intimately familiar with the Nordic style. So I'll give a few basic introductions. I'll tell you about this particular LARP. You have some in-game video to show you. And I'll tell you about the technological support systems we built to make it immersive experience, make it feel for the players as if they were on a spaceship in outer space and not in a museum warship in Gothenburg Harbor. And to do that, it turns out that setting a soundscape and having control of the auditory experiences of the participants was a crucial component. If you keep hearing tourists shouting or cars going by, it kind of mars the experience of outer space. And for one of the pieces of this technology stack, we settled on Haskell as an implementation language, and so I'm going to end up showing you, talking to you a bit about the Haskell layer. I had prepared to have a soundbox here and show you the hardware we actually used on the boats. But while it worked on my colleague's computer day before yesterday, couldn't get it to work on my own computer yesterday evening, so no hardware demo today, and I apologize in advance for that. I hope I can entertain you and interest you with what I did bring. So, did I skip too quick? So LARP, live action role playing game, springs out of the urges to take the fantasies you bring up in playing role playing games and make them more real. Instead of sitting around a table telling each other tales, you step out and you act out the thing instead of just talking about it. And so there has been some academic research on it. There are definitions on it. They're not universally agreed upon, and no particular consensus as to whether they cover the area they should. But there are a couple of definitions out there. And they tend to focus on things like how it's collaborative storytelling, how it requires you to take part in order to consume the media. It's distinct from theater in that there is no audience in a live action role playing game. You do use costumes, you do use props, you do use physical positioning and acting as a way of conveying the story. It spans over all genres. There's been everything from the classical high fantasy, where lots of the hobby has its roots, to deeply avant-garde modern art creations where participants play out aspects of a dream of a common person by rolling around in a dark room covered in wheat flour. And there are vast geographic variations in LARPing style. I myself have been part of LARPs in Sweden, Germany, and the US. in the UK, 1,100 stories from people who have been LARPing in the US as well. And as you go from country to country, there are very different aspects to what is considered part of the experience. There are different aspects of what things, what kinds of artistic licenses are accepted and which are not, what part of the immersion versus good storytelling versus good adventure versus interesting puzzles is the more important versus leveling up your character. Not to forget, is considered the important part of the game. And so this particular game plays in the geographic variation commonly called Nordic LARP. In the Nordic countries, in the mid-90s, we had a sudden infusion of participants from the improvised theater scene into the LARPing scene, which changed the flavor of LARP in the Nordic countries quite radically from the rest of the world. Nordic LARPs are characterized by having a strong focus on deep immersion. You want to eliminate distractions. You want to eliminate things that jolt you out of the immersive storytelling and into something mechanical. So things like on-site storytellers or game masters who run around and facilitate rules-based combat rules or things like that are frowned upon in the Nordic LARP style. Because then all of a sudden, when you build up the drama of your conflict, all of a sudden you have to stop everything and do some dice rolls to figure out what actually happens. And so there's focus on dramatic and narrative structure, a huge focus on immersive and believable representation of the world and of the game, and quite a lot of respect for player autonomy. The railroading storytelling, where the game masters or the game creators lay out one and only one possible path for the players, is frowned upon. The typical storytelling style in a Nordic style LARP is that all the setup for the story is done in the preparations. You get or you propose your own character, and you get the connections between your character and other characters. So you start out with a network of desires or hopes or conflicts already in place. But from the moment the LARP starts, the idea is to let it run its course without stepping in and controlling. And so the Monitor Celestra was Nordic style LARP. It was held in 3 repeated games across 3 weekends. In March of 2013, it was preceded by 9 months to a year of pretty intense technical and dramaturgical preparations. It played in the setting of Battlestar Galactica, the TV series with humans fighting robots in a galactic war, and with a fair amount of moral and theological headaches and challenges woven into the story. And we managed to get access to the battleship Småland, which is in Maritiman here in Gothenburg, a collection of museum ships that are anchored out in the harbor. And we were allowed to non-destructively remodel the entire ship. So we had crews go through. And pull cabling. We had several kilometers of TP cable throughout the entire ship. Some of it drawn so that players could cut it, that you could actually sabotage internal communications on the ship. And some of it's drawn much more securely and used to facilitate the game experience. So we had control modules. You could go to a big module and interact with the ship in various ways at different places. You had communication lines to the game masters. You could call out of the ship to the game masters and ask for help if something didn't work, or ask for ideas if you were completely stuck and nobody could get you further. And we also went through and replaced all signage with signage and updated visual style, redid floor plans. So the front of the ship Småland was actually the back, the engine room and the rocketry of the monitor ship Celestra. And so the internals were flipped to, and we had a floor plan that was superimposed on the ship floor plan, but stuck in the fictional universe.
They are not considered an immediate threat, and they are preparing a delegation to come aboard the Celestra to discuss what they call our common future. And one of the nation's executives has been vetted out in the airlock.
And the Colonial Marines are only here to supervise and support the Celestia crew in running the ship.
So from this moment, I declare partial rule by the power invested in me by the military and civil law.
You're not taking away the power of my people.
The power of some people has to be applied, and it will have power and everything else as well.
Have done successfully, people. Just take it easy. Just take it easy. I want to go up there and put down your help, okay?
Our options are we need to take down the before it comes in.
If you get me up there, I can fix this.
Games had an in-character news crew, people who played journalists who brought video cameras on board and produced this this movie after the game with footage they caught in character on board the ship. So that's sort of the mood we were setting. To do this, we had a wide range of technical support machinery. You saw some of the spaceship controls glimpsed by in the sequence. We had, I think, 10 or 12 different consoles. Big wooden boards with laser-cut plastic tops to get the right feeling, and a flush-mounted screen behind them. Specialized controls around them that connected to an Arduino board inside. That in turn connected to a small computer that also sat inside this box, ran the entire thing. So when the box was up and running, it basically displayed a dynamic webpage made with a layout that encoded a whole bunch of game aesthetics and game information. And you had a very limited set of controls, maybe just a button, maybe something you could twiddle, that then help you interact, set things like distribution of power from the reactor, or control the sensor apparatus and see what's around the ship in space, or load torpedoes into the battle system. And we managed to hook things up so that when you started, say, loading a torpedo, the sound system picked up on that game command and was able to launch sounds appropriate to make it sound as if torpedoes started loading at the front of the ship, so that in the rooms close to the torpedo base, you would start hearing the noise as the command to load the torpedoes was given, and so on for across the board. The noise in the reactor hall was adapted to the utilization level of the reactor. Oh, okay. I clearly had no idea how much time I would actually have. We built, I'm going to speed through smash down a few cases. We built a sound system. We had Raspberry Pi nodes distributed through the ship, connected to loudspeakers that were all remote controlled by a very simplistic communication protocol. And we ended up building Haskell specification language for soundscapes, basically encoding things like play this sound file at that sound node with this volume. Building it in Haskell let us have very easily have several layers of abstraction, sort of stacked very nicely, easy and quick to write translation and compilation functions that took, say, sound specification that requires a crossfade from one sound to another, and automatically in the translation step replace that with a sequence of volume modifications down to the lower level language that was produced before I got involved, that had support for play a sound and change volume. And there I really should stop talking so that you get a chance. Thank you.
How long was the writing for
I got involved in December, started working hard on the Haskell code in mid-January. Where working hard means evenings and weekends maintaining my full-time job on the site.
2012?
December 2012, January 2013. So few months before the game.
How much of work for a week of game? A month of work?
So we had three game instances. Each of them had 2 full days of game time, and I think we spent roughly the equivalent of 2 full-time weeks on it. And that's one of the things I was planning to bring up as something that ended up being as good as we were hoping for. Using Haskell meant, and being relatively used to it myself, meant we had very fast development and adaptation turnaround. We were very quick to write what we wanted to write, and very quick to adapt it when we met new requirements.
Okay, well, we've got 3 questions up running, so let's take those 3 and then perhaps the break and pick up further during that. First one. Yeah.
Oh, I just wanted to ask about time again. What was your approach to time? Did you like put everything in a state monad and an IO monad, or did you have like more like an FRP system?
The low-level system that we were passing down to from the Haskell layer had some sort of synchronization built into it, and had support for delaying packages. So you could dump out a package on the common bus and basically say, I want you to play this sound now, and that sound after 250 milliseconds, and that sound after 5 seconds. And so the Haskell layer doesn't care about time in the least. But it has one field in the data type for specifying a sound that contains the delay until the command should be executed.
So the Haskell layer has no input, or is it continuously executed in a kind of loop?
The communication bus for the entire game was an AMQP system, some advanced message queuing protocol, something like that. So, the Haskell implementation of that sets up a event-driven loop.
Yeah.
So we built the entire Haskell system as something that reacted to certain incoming AMQP packets.
These message files you basically.
Yeah.
You said you would say something about the strengths and weaknesses of Haskell with its application.
Right. So here's the weaknesses that we experienced. Many of these are way more social and project management weaknesses than Haskell weaknesses. Some of them we never managed to find a root cause for. But we had the hope when we started out that we would build this layer and then hand over the manual to the creative team who were building the soundscapes and have them actually write what they wanted and for the system to work. That didn't work.
So how many of your components could be considered reusable infrastructure, and how much of it is essentially write and use once?
If you were to want to do something like this, that is to say, spatially addressed independent sound emitting nodes with communicating with message passing, I'm pretty sure we can take our entire stack and with minimal modification drop it in to do that.
Okay, so we're now a little bit over, so let's once again thank Michael for